From UBN Studios, you're listening to Unsugarcoated with Aalia, bringing you interviews with public figures and inspirational people speaking on self-improvement with empowering themes. And I'm your host, Aalia Lanius. Hello, and welcome back to your favorite social good podcast. I know it has been a minute, but I am so happy to be back. Let's see, what's been going on since the last season is a lot. For those of you who know, we actually shot 2 episodes with a live studio audience in LA in August, late August. Such an amazing experience, such a great time. We are excited about continuing to move towards that direction. You know, we have the podcast, but we want to welcome people to this amazing experience. And then I got COVID afterwards, which was really not funny, but funny. And then the holidays hit. So we're here in 2023. But you know what? We continue to focus at Unsugarcoated Media on creating social impact through storytelling. And you know that we love to do that not only through our guests, but also through our organization. We include a team of incredible students that are pursuing careers in media, marketing, journalism, and other distinguished areas. And what I love most is being able to welcome them to be part of this experience, to learn that you can both work and create a career for yourself, but still make a difference. And it also allows them to develop their voices, perspectives, gain confidence, and leadership skills along the way. So, you know, thank you for all that you do to support Unsugarcoated Media, because it's not just about me, it's about what we collectively do for ourselves and for our community. So thank you so much. You definitely can support us by subscribing to our newsletter at unsugarcoatedmedia.com. Comment, share, stay connected with us. You know the deal. Be part of our mission. We welcome you and we thank you. So, moving into the new season. Well, as always, we have our theme, and our theme is emotional intelligence. Now, I know some of you may be like, why are you saying emotional intelligence? Are you just jumping on the bandwagon? EI, it's like the new buzzwords, right? No, it's not. For people who know my story, when we talk about the things that, you know, I personally have overcome, and give credit to things like emotional intelligence, personal development, those things have given me the ability to overcome the domestic violence, the homelessness, the cancer, the trauma. And sadly, because of a lack of emotional intelligence within our communities, people are constantly subjected to more trauma. So in an effort to, you know, educate, inspire, and represent, emotional intelligence is very key to that. So each of our guests, though they're all amazing, you know how we do, but we are going to invite them to also bring up how emotional intelligence impacts the industry that they're in, the work that they're doing, and how they're contributing. So today's episode is all about the inspiring and surprising benefit of comic books. For too long, comic books have been dismissed as mere entertainment or harmful to young minds. But the truth is, they can make you smarter and more emotionally intelligent. Comic books are a powerful tool for learning, combining visual elements with narration and written description to accelerate comprehension and understanding. And the benefits don't stop there. Comic books can help break down barriers such as illiteracy and offer a bridge between picture books and short novels. Children who learn through comics are more likely to understand and enjoy reading, setting them up for success in life. But it's not just for kids. Comic books are for everyone. They offer a unique way to interpret and explore emotions, providing a window into the human experience and the complex range of feelings that come with it. We're honored to have an expert in the field joining us today to discuss the inspiring benefit of comic books. And we want to hear from you. Do you have a favorite comic book that helped you understand and appreciate emotions in a new way? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. But let's get to embracing the power of comic books and use them not only to expand our minds, but also deepen our emotional intelligence. The world needs more empathy, understanding, and connection, and comic books are one of the ways we can achieve that. So let's get started. B Earl is an American comic book writer and filmmaker working with Marvel Entertainment since 2017, writing Masters in the Sun, Werewolf by Night, Ghost Rider Kushala, and most recently, Deadly Neighborhood Spider-Man, He and his creative partner, Taboo from Black Eyed Peas, also contributed to the special series Marvel 1000. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. B Earl.
Hello. Wow, this is such an honor. I'm so excited to be here. It's interesting because I've been thinking a lot about the power of comic books. I actually just got a book called The Anatomy of the Comic Book just the other day because I saw it on the shelves in Barnes & Noble and I was like, oh, this looks cool. And it really dives into the history of comics, which is a relatively new medium. I mean, it's when you look at film and these sort of mediums of storytelling and novels and short stories that have been around for a very long time, comics haven't really been around as long.
Right.
But they've always been a great way to look at the world around us and in a really interesting way. I mean, you look at political cartoons that ultimately, I think it was political cartoons that brought down Boss Tweed in New York, right? Like there's a lot of really interesting history connected to comics. And,
100%.
I am not an expert on it, but I do really appreciate the depth that comics have. And I think, to your point, it's really interesting looking at about the emotional intelligence. Like, what does it mean when you read a comic and how it can connect to you in different ways, right? And we're in a really interesting time right now with superheroes.
Of course. And
Alan Moore even spoke to it about, it's almost connected to the rise of populism and nationalism. And it's also a bad thing. Like, there's a lot of dark side. Everything is a double-edged sword, right? So when you start looking at superheroes that come in with their fists and their powers and they start kicking down doors and making it all good, and this idea of what does it mean to be a hero? Well, we were at a time when those sorts of heroes were needed. Right. And I think we're shifting away from that. And we're also seeing, what do heroes really mean? And what is a hero without a cape? And what is a hero that, lives in an everyday life? And I think those kinds of things really speak to what you're talking about when it comes to, the idea of emotional intelligence, but also where we're having a consciousness shift and a need for, what does it mean to be connected to our own sort of spirituality, and whether it's through religion or some sort of deeper sense of being. And over time, we've really lost, institutionalized religion has also its double-edged sword and its problems, and has created a lot. And, working within the Native space and with Taboo, looking at how Catholicism and Christianity also were very problematic within Native and Indigenous cultures when it came to, America or any other sorts of spaces with colonization. And, I in writing these sorts of things, and especially with comics, it's not about trying to be pedantic, trying to get in and say, these are teaching moments, and we're trying to tell you this and that. But it really is about, how do we use sort of pop culture and characters and metaphor, allegory, and the poetry of it and symbols in order to better understand and kind of give you a very top level of, like, hey, this is the story. Here's a layer to it that hopefully you'll get something out of. But then you'll go to another layer if you want to. And then maybe you'll go to the third or fourth, or depending on how deep the layers go, the onioning. Yeah. We can speak more about this with Deadly Neighborhood Spider-Man, because it's one that really, for me, was an interesting journey when I first started thinking about the story and about what is the world of nightmares and what is dreams and how do we connect to that? So anyway,
I love it. And you started, it's funny because I'm like, these are definitely things I want to ask you about, but I love that you started it off that way. And funny enough, I think it's important for my audience. I always talk about how my evolution has become my revolution, right? And gaining my own emotional intelligence and understanding. So I have to admit that when my son, who is dyslexic, which to me is now a superpower, it's an ability, not a disability. Sure. However, I remember when he was younger and I wanted him to read because I felt like that's how you kind of overcome these things, to learn how to deal with it. He would be like, I'm reading comic books. And okay, I have to admit, I was one of those parents that was like, that's not reading. Yeah, I know.
Right. Yeah, it's not real literature.
I was boomer with it. I was. And I feel badly now because, of course, I recognize it. I recognize the power. And on top of it, like, we both know Michael Yusland, love him, adore him. And David. He was the one who really, he was the first person to teach on comic books. And only bringing that up because the folklore, like, he talked about, I remember when he said, when he went to the board and said, I want to teach on comic books. And they were like, what's the relevance? And they're like, well, can you tell me the story of Jesus, right?
Right.
Or, or excuse me, sorry, Moses.
Moses,
being
right.
put in the basket and sending down, and then,
It's all the myths.
and then, okay, now tell me
Yeah.
the story of Superman. Like, suddenly you're
yeah.
like, wow, I just connected the dots, that truly you're still seeing the folklore that's passed down. So I think that there's so much there. Just kind of hitting on the aspect of illiteracy. We know so many people are being displaced. Look at what happened in Turkey, what's happening in refugee camps. I mean, for some kids that don't actually get a chance to really go to school and learn, how does it feel? And I mean, with an illiteracy rate that is, according to UNESCO, around 773 million adults around the world lack basic literary skills, literacy skills. Literacy skills. Excuse me. I promise I can talk. It's because I'm back in here after a way too long hiatus. But so how does it feel for you? Are you aware of the impact you're making when you are creating this works? Recognize the power that this could help someone, bridge the gap in their learning capabilities.
It's interesting you say that because, I'm also working with a company out of India called PowerCore that talks to kids 8 to 17, I think. And it's exploring, with them, it's more about exploring media opportunities. But I mean, when it comes to storytelling, and this is a word that's so overused. I mean, it's like just beyond overused, especially in the tech space. I mean, marketing. Oh, we're telling a story with our product, and it's like, oh, great, consume, obey.
Yes.
They live, But the reality of storytelling, it's so intrinsic to who we are as human beings. And, how we share those ideas and those stories. So, literacy speaks to understanding language and the written language. And the written language helps with your brain forming in certain ways. I mean, I'm no expert. My uncle, Dr. Ray Jackendoff, because my pseudonym is B Earl, but, my uncle, Dr. Jackendoff, Ray Jackendoff, is an expert in linguistics. This is what he talks around the world about semantics, cognitive thought, music, and music connecting to language. And music is a language. And what does language even mean, right? Like, and what, our visual language. It's very interesting because we're almost going back to a symbolic language right now with emojis. We are
very
so, smiley face, this, that. We have all these emojis that we use. My mom just uses them incessantly. I have like a text from her is like 3 words and then just like 1,000 emojis. I'm like, Mom, what are you trying to say? Is this, can I have a cryptograph to understand what this is? Hippopotamus, elephant, fire. Is the fire accident? Are you trying to cook it? I don't know. Anyway,
That's hilarious.
but I think it's language helps form the brain, right? And when we read, it gave power, right? Reading, it was right. It was the Gutenberg press was the very first form of mass media. The Bible was the very first thing ever printed, and before you had like those books that were handwritten calligraphy by monks and by scholars, and it was the library was almost sacred. It was like a church, in its own ways.
That's why you have to be so quiet.
Right, I know. Shh, quiet to the library. I mean, when it was at the library, was it the Library of Alexandria? I mean, when you burn books, when you destroy knowledge, that is the only way that it's being passed on is through some sort of form of this codex, this coding. I mean, we as humans look at words, letters, symbols, and we decode them. And we are coders and encoders and decoders. And, it's this process. And in going back to that, like in writing Spider-Man, the Deadly Neighborhood Spider-Man, I was like, would the demon bear actually talk in words? And there's this moment. My son was like, Dad, I couldn't read. I think it was in issue 2. He's like, issue 2 is really hard to read because like there's this big spiral and I didn't know where I was reading. And I'm like, but it made you have to work for it because the demon bear actually uses all these like symbols and then Spider-Man is decoding it for you. And he's telling it from his perspective, right? So it's that interesting thing of like, what is the truth of the narrator? And Spider-Man is narrating it to us. Are we getting exactly what he's hearing from the demon bear? Is he messing it up and mixing it up? Does he really understand the message that he's getting?
Right.
I love those kinds of things because it's like puzzles. And so I do hope to your question about kids learning and my knowledge of what I'm doing, hoping that it does have some sort of impact. I mean, I think when we go into the creative process and we go into writing, we're not we're thinking about our end user, so to speak, our audience.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we're also thinking about like how it connects to us, because we're as much a macrocosm as a microcosm. And if we can look at ourselves and understand how we're perceiving the world around us empirically through our senses, all that, then we can have a better understanding of how those that interact with what we're creating will be able to get.
Oh my gosh. So true. So true. AI, ChatGPT, there's of course a lot of people that are afraid. I mean, there's people that have quite a bit of anxiety surrounding that type of technology because they feel like it's not really going to, then people won't learn to think for themselves, or that AI will, what do you feel will start to replace our thinking and our cognitive skills, will just become reliant. But what do you think AI can do, and what do you think it cannot do?
Well, I mean, that's a very loaded question.
Yeah, I know.
And I also have to like kind of precursor that with, I got development to OpenAI about 1.5 years ago. I had to go through a whole interview process and, got API access keys to the DaVinci and the Curie and the Babbage and all that, the Ada. There's all the different layers of, the language models that you get to use. And I am working on an AI project. I can't talk too much about it because, we've been...
Because you don't have to kill anybody.
Yeah, I don't want to kill anybody. But, it's a challenge because I think, one of the biggest things is that so often we've let technology wag the creative dog. And it's one of my big reasons why I have been speaking out on technology, but in a positive way. And I use it, I'm launching an NFT digital collectible book in less than a few days. I don't know when this will air, but March 1st we're minting. So, and it's very exciting because, when you use technology to be sort of implementing ideas, implementing processes, helping to sort of be a connective tissue that hasn't been there otherwise. Like, for instance, look, you're using a computer. Instead of having to carry a typewriter around, you're using a computer that you have a much easier way to get thoughts and ideas into a sort of format that then can be distributable, right? So, when it comes to something like ChatGPT, which is utilizes a large language model and looks to create some sort of a feeling of discourse with, whatever you want to call it. Like, are you talking to the internet? Right. I mean, it's trained on the internet. I feel like
that's it. Everyone did that when Siri came out, right? Everyone would get on their phone and Siri.
I think Siri was more of a gimmick. I think when you get into the weeds of ChatGPT and you actually start, when I first got access to OpenAI's, the DaVinci model and started really kind of pushing on it and seeing what could come back, it was really interesting. I mean, it took some really weird turns, and I got into some really strange, dark places, getting into conversations around consciousness. But the ChatGPT, the reason why it is a stronger chat model than the DaVinci that we originally had gotten access to is because it's able to maintain a conversation relative to what the input is, right?
Right.
But it's still a natural language model. It still is not, there's also the other AI, which is the Bayesian models, which are inference and use causal relationships to kind of look at, what is around and what is the world and things like that. So I think we're going towards this space where perhaps we as artists and creatives will be able to get a faster understanding of certain things and hopefully start getting closer to the truth, because I think one of the biggest challenges with the internet is that it's filled with so many half-truths, lies, and convolution, because unfortunately it's so easy to upload things without any sort of gatekeeping. And as kids are coming up, they're getting inundated with all of this information, which becomes very much like white noise. And then you're unable to really process, well, what is true and what is not. And I think this is even where blockchain starts coming in. This idea of what we talk about with Web3, it's still an idea, but I think when you start like putting this like Venn diagram of all of these pieces together, the one thing you start coming closer towards is truth. And truth is the one thing that can ultimately get us further as a species, so we can have a better understanding of consciousness and who we are and why we are. And maybe there is no meaning. Maybe I just finished reading, I mean, on a Kurt Vonnegut kick, and I just finished reading Galapagos, and maybe we're just going with our big brains back into the ocean to just be fisher people. I don't know.
I know. None of us do. But I'm enjoying the ride while I'm here, and I agree with you.
That's all we can do.
I mean, and as a creative, like we talked about this before, I know, like the humanization part that we have, like AI is great, and we utilize it with our work and with our media, but there's just some things it can't do. Like our humanity is based on our experiences, it's exciting, but I've always been an early adopter. I had a computer. I mean, I'm almost 50, and I had a computer in my house at 9 years old when no kid, I mean,
yeah, same.
My
dad was teaching me programming at 11.
Yeah, no, my mom was Lotus, D-Base, all that,
C-prompt. CD //
Yeah, I remember going to class in middle school, and they were like, gave us the paper with the keyboard on it, and it was like the fake to teach us. I'm like, I already know how to type. What like, I'm 30 words a minute in middle school. You guys are giving me a piece of paper to learn the keyboard on, but I love it, and I love that you spoke to it in that way. Tell us more about your multi-project TV film deal with Gaumont Entertainment. I know you work with Taboo.
Yeah.
Great. At some point, I know we got to get him and you on here. I know he's on vacation. But what can the audience expect from the series you're developing now?
Well, I mean, so we've got a few. There's just a lot on the table. It's a lot of different things. Fingers in so many pots. I can't talk specifically to too many things. When Tab and I started working together, and our vision of what we saw creatively together was always about looking to speak to our kids, right? That was always the concept. I mean, when we first met, it was really connecting over the fact that we're both fathers. And the future is in the kids' hands, right? I mean, this
is true, whether we like it or not.
Right. I mean, it's reality. So, one of the things we always talked about was, how can we create content for our kids that comes from our own truths? And Tab's truth, and where he comes from was being, raised in a Native and Mexican heritage, and something that he's been, exploring and coming back to, and becoming a very big voice in the First Nations communities. And my background is kind of having been raised Jewish and Catholic, and this always sort of interesting intersection of spirituality and ideology, as well as philosophy and psychology, like all these things that I have been pulling at, and sort of my own journey of feeling like I don't know where I belong. And I think that's where the two of us sort of intersected, was this idea of identity and belonging. And where do we belong? I'm not Jewish enough, but I'm also not Catholic enough. He's not Native enough, but not, it's like, so where do you belong? And I think, in this era, it's a thing of like, we're going through an identity crisis. I think we're going, just even as humans right now, so much of like my avatar, my this, my that, pronouns, like who am I? They, like the fact that we put pronouns on our Zoom calls, it's like, I get it, but at the same time, like, what does that mean?
Right.
And what are we trying to say, and who we are and why?
Right.
And I think that's really what I look to explore, and I know Tab as well, in his own storytelling, and his being more obviously on the music side, but in our projects, and we have a few that are grade school, middle school, or and so we actually have one that's a preschool one, and then we have a scripted that we're developing. It's a little more like CW style, like that age,
right?
But the goal being looking at what does it mean to have a sense of self and identity, and then in a larger scope of what does that self mean in relation to nature, to the world around us, to society. What even is society? What is civilization? Like all these things, these are the questions that I'm always thinking about. But really, it's like, here we are in a world that we exist in, and how do we exist with it as opposed to without it?
Right,
and I think that's really the big question, right? Like, we always think that we're better than the world around us, that we exist above nature, and in fact we exist in and with and because of nature.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you.
So yeah, those are
I love that though. I mean, and I I relate, you just, when you speak to my soul, because even my books, I wrote them for my kids from that perspective of our truth, my truth, like being multicultural is a very, and I love that we were just at the LA Art Show. I took some of the interns down, and, we saw a lot of like Korean American art, and we were just looking and, really looking at how artists represent the twist of the brain, twist, if you will. I want to say the other word, the F-U-C-K word, but for some reason I'm afraid to curse right now. I don't know why I can curse on the show. The brain, the brain twist that happens because, like you said, like I'm not this, I'm not enough of this, and I mean, I know for me, people are always like, they look at me and they're like, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "I'm from California." I'm from California. Yeah. But I know where you're going with this, and so, anyways, as an artist, I wanted my kids to feel that they had something that they
feeling
could.
of belonging.
Exactly.
And understanding, I think, as a child, you're always trying to build your identity, right? And that's where the teenage years come from. I mean, I've now 11-year-old going on 12 and just started homeschooling him. So now I'm seeing him a lot more, which is a lot like one of the most beautiful things. I mean, it's just so grateful to be able to have that I can give to him because, he was going through, bullying and stuff like that in school and just really tough times. And, you try to make it better. You try to figure it out, but ultimately sometimes you can't. And I'm very blessed to be able to have that capability to say, yes, you can come home and be able to do it here.
Right. Which is amazing because it's amazing. I only say that because I know of another producer, amazing guest, Jeff Gomez, who again, utilizing the illustration of art actually helped him not get bullied as a kid. He was able to connect. But it's just funny you say that. I know we've just gone through a pandemic, and some people be like, "You're happy to have your kid homeschooled." I actually had homeschooled my kids before the pandemic as well. Same. And then when they went into the pandemic version of homeschooling, they're like, "This ain't homeschooling." My stuff was organized. But I want to say my 6-year-old, she just started. She started kindergarten this past fall, and I remember when we sent her off, my husband, which is his first child, and then my fourth, of course. So anyways, we're sending her off, and we're both teary-eyed. Yeah. But we're teary-eyed for different reasons, ironically enough. And I want to be honest, and I love that art and drawing, and she's an artist. I so encourage it with her because when I sent her off, the tears for me was knowing what the challenges in schools, like so many people, it's like, yay, I'm sending my kid off to school, I don't have to pay for daycare, and like and they're gonna have this fun, and they're gonna have friends, and I'm like, man, kids are mean. And if you don't have a way to express yourself or get lost, like reading for me was my escape, like you said. What was yours? Like, was that the same experience for you? What's impacted you? What's shaped you the most, do you think?
Well, I mean, it's funny, like I loved drawing when I was little. But it was challenging because, my dad also was a really, he's a painter and sculptor and artist and writer. And, it was funny because like and he played music. So I was doing all these things that, he also was into. And I think there was the challenge of not wanting to be judged. He was very critical in his own, as parents can be. So it ultimately pushed me into film. But then I've sort of come back around again. Because when I was 11, I wanted to make comics. And similarly, as we started this conversation, was talking about, as a parent, my dad was like, no, you should read the real Thor, the sagas of, all that stuff. And I loved reading Greek mythology. I loved reading Celtic tales and all that stuff. But I loved my comic books. And, it wasn't until I had done a documentary on comics that my parents both saw, oh, okay, we get it. These are like the people that make the comics. They're smart people. Oh, okay. Like, all right, fair enough. Like, we get why you like comics when you were a kid. But, I escaped into music. I escaped because I loved playing music. I would come home every day from high school, and I just had my little recording studio, my old 4-track, my Tascam. This is before, we had all the digital stuff these kids now have, and SoundCloud. You had to record on tapes, and you had to try to be able to get 4 tracks on those tapes, fun times. But I mean, that for me was such an outlet, and Dungeons and Dragons and all that storytelling. And, I really found that allowed me to sort of tap into my self and my true self, and that place that, you know, I now can go back to when I'm creating, because I can go and say, yeah, I remember when I was 12.
Right.
I can remember when I was 14 and coming up. And I found, like, oh my gosh, I have my old D&D books, you know, from the early 90s, and I found old adventures I had written and old maps.
Don't you love that?
Oh, it was so cool. I was like, oh, wow. Like, I remember this adventure I had on the back of a turtle. Oh, and but I didn't have anybody to play these adventures with, so I would just make them up and play them myself. My sister, I have a little sister. She's, you know, no longer little, but I was like, Hillary, why don't you play with me? And she's like, I don't want to play Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like, but come on, it'll be fun.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, that for me has become, you know, that sort of bedrock that now, as a creative, as an author, writer, storyteller, you know, I'm able to go back to and remember what it was like. And, you know, it's cool seeing my son also have that and go to that. And, you know, he's also into music and playing, you know, he's all into heavy metal. That was one of the things people didn't, you know, everybody at school was like, heavy metal's for losers, you know, and he's like, I'm into, like, you know, whatever, Slaughter to Prevail. You know, like, and I'm like, yeah, it's cool, man. You know, I get it. My first concert was Entombed. But I think, you know, we find those things that give us a feeling of belonging and a sense of community. And comics have a great community. Dungeons and Dragons no longer is weird and nerdy.
Right.
You know, there's a movie coming out about it. Like, Matt Mercer and the Critical Role folks have made it cool. Like, so all of a sudden, all the stuff that I did that was nerdy and geeky and, you know, in grade school and high school, it's cool now.
Right.
So it's weird when you start looking at perceptions and start looking at, like, that identity of perception. And, well, isn't, you know, I'm rocking my Sideshow. Like, on the back, I think it says, you know, let your geek side show.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, a little shout out to my folks at Sideshow. But, you know, we're building communities that allow for people to actually feel at home and feel that they can express themselves genuinely. And I think that's really the most important thing we can do as creatives.
Oh, I agree. I love it. Okay, so actually, before I ask where guests can go to support you, I have a few rapid fire questions for you. Okay, so we'll go through these as quickly as possible. They're intended, of course, to be fun. So, yeah. Okay, if you could be any superhero, who would you be and why?
Nightcrawler, because I like to be able to bamf.
Okay, what is your go-to comfort food?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, sushi, and, you know, because that's you know, but I also love pho. Oh. I can never say it. Pho. Pho. You know, I love pho. Like,
is mine.
I'm like, I just, you know, it's sitting there just eating my soup and with a blanket over my head. No, I'm just kidding.
K-Town pho 2000 is like the best pho I've ever had in LA. And
really?
I'm like okay. I'm with you.
All right. You have to let me know. Great. Pho.
And by the way, sushi. We got to get together with your girl and my husband. We got to go do sushi.
Yeah.
What is the funniest thing that happened to you recently?
Oh, I mean, that's a really good question. Funny, I don't know, because funny is, you know, it's
do you fall down in front
yeah,
of
it's like you know, funny for someone else is not. It's all subjective.
Sure.
I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
You're not like me. I would have actually had an answer for that. I was in this Lee Steinberg's party for the Super Bowl. We were coming down from a rooftop party, and I accidentally missed the last two steps and fell forward. And then I popped up and looked at my husband and said, "See, you're supposed to be next to me." Because of course.
See, that's good. You've pratfalls, funny comedy. You know, I don't know, bananas.
Gotta like know how to go with it, right?
Right. I don't know.
Well, it's good. We haven't. So you haven't had any.
I haven't had any like comedic falls that have made me the butt of a joke. I'm not sure, but you know, maybe I've like actually just pushed it down. So maybe there's some really funny things, and I've just like buried it and eaten some pho. I'm like,
pho will do that too. Okay, do you have any guilty pleasures like binge watching or a cheesy reality TV show?
No,
or eating ice cream straight from the container.
Guilty pleasures. You know, I guess like. I don't know if it's a guilty pleasure. I mean, I love watching Curb Your Enthusiasm. I mean, he's just, it's so cringe-worthy, and it kind of just makes me go, oh, my life's not that bad.
It's perfect. I mean,
Like,
curb your
Larry
enthusiasm.
David, you just, but yeah, that's
Backsplash on the Jesus painting. I think
Oh
was
my
in the
God. Oh my
bathroom.
God.
Like, no,
With the
don't even-
tear, he's
don't even
crying.
Open up the conversation. 'Cause,
Jesus
I love Curb Your
Christ. Yeah,
Enthusiasm.
that's a pleasure of mine. I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's
It's good. At least my husband's like, he's like doing those dating shows on the reality.
Oh, well, it's funny. So I came from
Like-
reality TV early on. After
Okay.
I'd done documentaries, I worked for a company that it was with Bobwell, I think. It was Fifth Wheel and Blind Date.
Oh, okay.
So I worked on Fifth Wheel.
Okay.
And then I was on a dating story. I worked on it before that. And, and then I did another one of them when I moved out here. What was it called? Like, To Marry My Dad or something.
Oh,
It was like Marry My Dad. It was on NBC. It was years and years and years ago. And it was just one of those things where I just felt like a part of my soul always died when I was working those because of the manipulation of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
storytelling.
yeah.
I was like, this doesn't feel good to me.
Right.
And then I went and ate some pho.
gotta go back to
So
the
I gotta
front.
go back to the pho. Bring it back 3 times.
Oh my
Anyway.
gosh, I love it. I love it. It's perfect. I'm
There
gonna
you
go
go.
have pho for dinner
There
tonight.
you go.
I'm
See,
gonna let
I've
you know.
subconsciously pho.
That or sushi for sure.
Yeah.
If you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would you pick?
Wow. One song for
I
the
know.
rest of my
Like,
life?
I don't even think I can do it. But what
That's
would be
a
at
tough
least on
one.
the
I
top?
mean, Tool is one of my favorite bands, and DJ Shadow is another one of my favorites. And there's this one song that DJ Shadow has. I think it's called "Stem Long Stem," and it's like this really long song. That one would be one of them, just because I think it goes through an emotional arc that I could be okay with listening for a long time. Otherwise, there's this really cool song by Godflesh that's 25 minutes long, and maybe I'm just being like, I want something that's really long, so I could just keep. Tool has a really like a long song at the end of Undertow as well. That's like you get a lot of it. It's the one with the shotgun. He's talking about the carrots.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
Anyway.
Well,
Yeah,
fine.
that's a tough
I love
one.
that. I love that.
Yeah. so
I
there you
think
go.
that's funny, and I feel you. I remember
I'll
one
go
time
with
I had
DJ
to.
Shadow.
Yeah, DJ. That's a good one. I remember driving from San Diego to Northern California once, like when P Diddy, they had dropped the Notorious B.I.G. and it had the Every Step You Take.
Okay.
Okay, so this was on cassette track in the car, and I only had that one
Oh my
cassette,
gosh.
and I listened to it for 12 hours. Let me tell you, I didn't listen to that song again for like 4 years. I mean, I
Oh
was
my
like, I
gosh.
couldn't do it. So
You're
I
like,
can only imagine.
yeah, I can't even. Yeah, I mean, maybe like Que Sera Sera is another good one. It's a really short song,
You're gonna
but
need
it puts you in a good space, or
Right.
maybe it'll put you in a really bad space. But at least you just keep going. Whatever will be, will be.
It is what it is.
I don't know.
I love it.
Either way, it's gonna make you insane listening to some song forever.
Very Jack Nicholson, The Shining.
Yeah.
Where can guests stay connected and support you?
So I'm on Instagram. I'm B Earl Writer there. I'm also Twitter, B Earl Writer. I don't do a lot on the Twitter side. Instagram a little more active. For all the business-minded folks, I'm much more active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So because I find that for me as a platform has the most sort of ROI, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
because the people that you connect with there are actually caring about what you are saying.
Yeah.
And ultimately it can lead to, work. It
Right,
can lead to
right.
collaborations.
Collaboration. I
like
love it.
real,
No, 100%.
yeah, because Instagram, unfortunately, is just, it's a scroll and look, whatever. And it's
Yeah.
very sort of titular, it's ooh, titillating. And
I know, I'm
whatever.
so bad. I'm so
Let me watch that dog video again. Oh, there's something Ben posted. Whatever. Dog videos, laughing. So I find that B Earl on LinkedIn is probably the best way to.
I love it. And actually, I think we're not connected, so now I'm going to have to go.
We're not? I
find
thought we
you.
were.
I know we are on IG, but I got to go now make sure we are.
No,
on
really?
LinkedIn.
All right.
I
well,
mean,
we've
we could
got-
be.
We could be. Let's double
But
check.
I'm going to have to double check. 'Cause if not, I'm going to
Okay.
feel a little sad. But no.
No. I thought we. Anyway.
I'm kidding.
We'll
I love
check.
it. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here
Yeah, thank you
and
for
spending
having
time
me.
with us today and making the drive over here. We really.
Oh, I made a walk.
I know. Well,
It was
I
a
know you
run.
Sprinted.
I
You
sprinted because I was. I was like, "What? I'm on my way."
I love
Yeah.
it. We are so thankful. You said such incredible things. I can't you know,
Well,
we're gonna
thank
have to
you.
have you back again. So
I
thank
would
you
I
so
would
much.
love that. I know it's like 30 minutes is such a short time to unpack so much.
It's okay. I
and-
let it go over because you're just saying such amazing things. I'm
Oh.
like, no, I'm not even going to cap this off at 30 minutes. Sometimes, you know, because some people may notice we
Thank you.
shortened it a little bit, but like, honestly, no, I love the conversation. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you so much for having me on here. And I can't wait for the next time.
Yeah, for sure. I love it.
Unsugar-coated. That's where we're
Unsugarcoated.
at.
It's a
right?
movement, you know, it is a movement. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, wow. What an amazing discussion we've had today with B Earl on the inspiring benefits of comic books. We've learned how comic books can make us smarter, more emotionally intelligent, and break down barriers to understanding. But let's not forget the most important takeaway from this episode: the power of stories. Stories have the ability to connect us, inspire us, and transform us. They offer a glimpse into the human experience and teach us valuable lessons about empathy, resilience, and hope. And comics books are no exception. They may have started as simple entertainment, but they have evolved into a powerful tool for learning and personal growth. They offer a unique way to interpret and explore emotions, making them a valuable resource for anyone looking to improve their emotional intelligence. So let's embrace the power of stories and let's use them to build a better world. We all have a story to tell, and we all have the power to make a positive impact on the world around us. So let's start by sharing our stories and listening to others. Let's learn from each other, work together, and create a world that is more compassionate, more understanding, and more connected. Thank you for listening to our show, and special thanks to B Earl for sharing his expertise with us today. We hope you found this episode inspiring and insightful, and we look forward to continuing this journey of social good with you in the future. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. Also sign up for our newsletter once again at www.unsugarcoatedmedia.com so you can stay up to date on what's going on with us. In the meantime, thank you. We'll see you next time. Thanks for letting us be unsugarcoated.